When we're ready to go.
Yep, we're live on YouTube now.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good evening and welcome to Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee on the 27th of January 2021. We have a big pack to go through. We got 295 pages to read through. I can assure you I'm not going to read every page. And we will try and move this along as fast as we can. I will try and move this as fast as I can, giving everyone a chance to ask the exec, and in certain instances, it's going to be the officers answering the questions. Off we go. Officer, can you tell us whether we have any apologies of absence?
I've not received any apologies for absence, but I'm, as always, happy to take any that people may want to pass on.
Yeah. Okay. If you think of anyone, just kindly put your hand up and we'll make a note of it. Point 2, minutes of previous meeting. Any comments? Anyone want to propose and second this one? Mr. Tapper is proposing. Anyone to second it? Councillor Crook is seconding it. Thank you. That's one little thing which we need, Officer Simpson, we need to carry forward is 26 PF into the next meeting, please, which is Property Investment Task Force Group. That should have come to this, but it's got to be moved across.
It's already it's on the agenda.
Yeah, thank you. I saw it. Thank you. Okay, 3, declaration of interest. Any declaration, because it's a big agenda here. So make sure that you have declared it as we come to the point. And if you think you have a declaration of interest, please do inform me, and Officer Simpson can make a note of it. None, I see. Great.
Yes, Chair. I have got my hand raised, my digital hand.
Sorry, I didn't see that. Sorry.
It's against a yellow background. You are excused. Yeah, just in connection with item 6, where there's a discussion about electrical vehicle charging, just I'd like to make a note for the record that I have a non-pecuniary interest here. I do own an electric vehicle.
Thank you. Noted. Thank you, Councillor Tapper. Moving on to item 4, planning and people. Mr. Page, Councillor Page, it's your portfolio. The way we would do this, I mean, this is not a big report. It is relatively long, but it's not a big report. Councillor Page, do you have to highlight anything on this, and we can take questions?
Thank you, Chairman. No, it's not a very long report. I'd like to keep it quite brief with bullet points. I'm sure you've all had a chance to read it. So my portfolio is around corporate enforcement, which has been topic of the week last week, drainage planning policy and planning enforcement services, and all those things that happen around that. The biggest effort is probably around planning enforcement and planning policy, and we have a number of very excellent officers who are developing the local plan. Members will be familiar that we're a very constrained borough in terms of planning, and we have some very difficult targets to hit in terms of providing housing, and we're also constrained by the Thames Basin Heath and some of the other areas, and we're also struggling to find Sangs land, so that if we do eventually want to look for new homes in the west of the borough, and particularly the town centre, if that develops going along, we're very constrained. But there are efforts being made in these areas. So, and I'm sure that there'll be some questions from members about this. And I'm very lucky to be supported by Jenny Rickard, Julia Greenfield, Jane Reeves, and others on this. So members, if you've read the paper and there's anything that you would like to ask, I'm happy to try and answer those, although I probably will defer to the officers who have much more information on this.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. I'm actually raising some points and some questions on behalf of another member of my group, but they are things that I endorse and would also like a response to if possible. There is obviously a breakdown on the planning appeals per quarter. However, obviously I read avidly those ones that come through into our inbox, and I think we've got quite a good success rate of when people have appealed against the decisions that we've made, and the number of appeals which are not upheld. So I wonder, please, if we could have a percentage of the number of council appeals that are actually allowed, if we could maybe have that from 2019 onwards. And the number in terms of the overall percentage of successful appeals against officer delegation reports, because I think it would be important to have a comparison between appeals against officers and appeals against the committee decisions, and how we're doing as a committee in terms of percentages. Because apart from anything else, I think it might highlight, and I've just got the edge of Jenny's face when I'm saying this, Jenny Rickard's face when I'm saying this, it would maybe highlight some areas where as members we need additional training if there is a disparity between those figures and the percentage basis. So yeah, that's it really. So if we could have a little bit more detail on it that looks at the percentage overall and also compares the percentage between committee and delegated decisions in terms of the success rate. I don't know. I think there was advance notice given of this. So I don't know if those figures are available.
Councillor Page, do you want to pass it on to an officer?
Yeah, I will. I know that Jenny's done some work and has probably got an answer for this. So Jenny, can I ask you to contribute at this point?
Yeah, John Partington and I have been looking at the figures. So if we take Q1 of 2019-20, there were a total of 11 appeals determined, of which 3 were allowed. One of those was a committee overturn, and the other 10 were delegated. So I'm assuming they were not allowed, because at the moment we're trying to get the figures sorted out. But as far as we can tell, most officer refusals are upheld, but we have quite a lot of member overturns being allowed. So we've just, for example, had the Teckles Park decision come through today, which was a member overturn and allowed. So we, as far as from what the figures I've got from John, which I've got to query some of the numbers with him because he's given me a breakdown and I'm querying the numbers. But so, for example, in if we take quarters 3 and 4 of 2019-20, I think there were 3 member overturns and they were all allowed, but that's not what the figures show. So I'm just trying to check with John what those figures are, whether those figures are actually correct.
I think if we could have definite figures, it would be really helpful, because obviously I'm aware of I'm aware of an overturn, a committee overturn that was then upheld at appeal and then subsequently at the High Court.
From agenda.
Sorry, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Chapman, would you be kind enough to mute yourself, please? Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Wheeler.
So I think if we could have sort of definite instances and definite cases, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, we've started a list of cases, but I'm just at the moment not able to completely tally the list I've got with the table. So we've got, and because this is all has to be done manually, that's the problem. It isn't recorded on any system. So it's a question of literally having to go through every individual appeal decision and check what happened. And at the moment, we haven't quite finished that.
Okay. Would it help that if the department has a kind of a spreadsheet which will actually help me in the future of the record?
Well, I mean, one of the officers could do that in future, yes, but the computer system doesn't do it. It's only a small number of appeals. We've just got to remember to manually keep a tally in future.
Chair, if I may, could I ask that is kept in future, and could I ask, please, that once the officers have had an opportunity to review those cases, that it's circulated to the members of this committee. Councillor Hawkins has joined us now. Councillor Hawkins, I don't know if you feel that it would be beneficial for it to be circulated to members of the planning committee as well, both from an educational point of view, but also from a monitoring point of view.
Chairman, if I may come in here. Under normal circumstances, the planning team present an annual report to the committee, as Councillor Wheeler knows. She's been on the committee long enough. And that has a breakdown of the appeals, overturns, and other areas of interest to the committee. One has to recognise that last year was a very different year, and our planning staff were pulled hither and thither and helping contact. So I fully sympathise with them of not having these figures to hand, because dare I say, I actually think they were doing something, I'm going to get shot at this, slightly more important than entering numbers of appeals by keeping contact with the vulnerable residents of the borough. And the feedback I've had from that has been fantastic. But we normally have, and I don't like to overload the officers, but I look forward to seeing the report at the end of this council year. And by the sound of it, the numbers have been put together. But it is something that normally happens. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Officer Rickard, sorry, through Councillor Page. Officer Rickard, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably better to report it to Planning Applications Committee, because then we could do a discussion.
Yes, absolutely. Agreed.
So we can certainly, as part of our annual report back to this committee, we would report the basic figures, but the actual details and the whys and wherefores are something that should go to Planning Applications Committee, because in part it's training and development for that committee and officers to figure out what we got right and what we got wrong.
Yeah, thank you, Officer Rickard. Can we actually note it in our minutes that that's what's been agreed here, please? Moving on, any more questions? Councillor Allaway first, then Councillor Tapper.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've got a few questions actually, and they haven't got all to be answered tonight.
Okay, can you do it one at a time and just don't try and load the whole thing in one go? It just gets confused. Yeah.
Okay. So paragraph 2.7 sayings, is it an option to compulsory purchase these?
Yes, I think that there is an opportunity to do that if we had the money and we had the land available. We are certainly we're certainly looking to do that. And again, I refer to Jenny. Jenny's got her hand up and she can give some more information about that. Jenny, on Sangs, would you like to talk about whether we can compulsory purchase or not compulsory purchase, but find land that's available that we might use?
Compulsory purchase is probably quite difficult because you have to go through a test of no suitable alternatives, and there's a whole borough out there, and so it's probably quite hard to pass that no suitable alternative test. But we are always on the lookout for Sangs. There are 2 developers at the moment who are talking to us about Sangs and whether there's spare capacity in there. So if we took them over, we could add capacity to that. We're also always trying to contact major landowners to see if they're interested, and also adjoining boroughs have Sangs capacity. So one of our solutions sometimes is to buy into spare capacity in adjoining boroughs. So we look for a wide range of solutions, and it's just what's available to us at the time. The last year or so has been rather difficult in trying to persuade anyone to talk to us about anything, quite frankly, but we are hoping to move that forward again.
Okay, Thank you for that.
Thank you.
On paragraph 3.4, the MPPF section, I think it's 5.8, requires us to monitor planning decisions. So is this going to be introduced for enforcement purposes, monitoring?
Sorry, Graham, I don't really understand that question. Could you ask that again?
Yeah, I'm also a bit confused with your question there, Graham. Could you repeat that so that we can follow that through?
Yeah, the MPPF indicates that the planning authority should monitor the delivery of and compliance of planning decisions. So I just wondered if that's being adopted.
Chairman, I see two hands up amongst the officers. I'm not really.
I'm rapidly.
I'm confused. I'd like to let Jenny or Julia Greenfield answer
Officer
that.
Ricard, would you like to answer that, please, to help out?
Yes, that was the matter that was discussed at the call-in to P&F Scrutiny Committee the other week, and the outcome of that discussion is being reported back to the next executive. And I think it's for the executive to decide how they want to deal with that, because there are resource implications around it. And can I respectfully suggest that perhaps we leave it to the executive to pick that up when the minutes of that meeting are reported to them.
Thank you. Okay. Next one, please, Councillor Allaway.
Yeah, on paragraph 4.3, there is some reports on flood issues, and one of the areas there is West End. So I just wondered where we could get a copy of those reports. Flood alleviation measures.
Yeah, so I know that Wayne's been working on Pennypot Lane in West End on flood alleviation around the junction of Belden Bridge and Pennypot. That's where that work's being carried out.
Okay, is there any access to the reports?
Jenny?
I will ask Wayne to send you whatever he's got.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any more?
Yes, 6.5 about planning resources. And why does it appear that the planning function has a high turnover of staff or a staff deficit?
Is that, have you got any facts with it, or is it impression you have?
No, it's a statement in there.
Yes, I mean, you know, we struggle with resources, and some of the things that you're asking for take officer time to do. Some of it is, you know, essential that you have, and some of it is nice to have, I think. So I you know, there's a lot being asked at the moment around enforcement and planning, which is very difficult to provide you, because we don't actually have bums on seats in the officer world of planning to be able to do some of that. So we're struggling to keep up, if I'm honest, and there is some resourcing issues. It's very difficult to find qualified planners, and it's very difficult to attract them to Surrey Heath. And then we then have to look at the salary bandings, which are quite high within that profession. So it has been a struggle for us. And I'm sure that Jenny can elucidate on that if you want to, but I wonder, Chairman, if we can't move on from that.
I think it sounds as though you've got a deficit in the market, doesn't it, of resource? Okay.
Maybe Jenny, if you can give an answer in one line, so to speak, so that we can
we're skimmed.
There are historic reasons for the difficulty in recruiting, but the reality is we're competing with the private sector, and even in the current downturn, the development industry is still looking to move ahead. So we're not seeing large numbers of planners coming out of the development industry. We're still struggling to attract good quality.
How many vacants have you got there in your?
At the moment, we've got one, and we're interviewing for that at the moment. We've got another part vacancy, and what we're going to do is recruiting a consultant who actually used to work for us and therefore understands all our systems and our processes and knows the councillors. And we're going to use that money to use that consultant for a few hours a week, because that's probably a better resource for us at the moment.
It's in the whole thing is in progress. Am I right?
All in progress. Perfect. Yes.
Thank you. Next, sorry, Councillor Wheeler, if you can do the electronic stuff. Sorry, not yet. I've got Councillor Happer coming up, or he's gone. Are you coming back again?
No, that's all right, Chair. I will pass on my question. I'll approach it from a different direction. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Galliford, then Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I am listening carefully to the fact that we're talking about resources, but I'd like to point out point 2.9 that, you know, we have declared a climate emergency. Climate Working Group has done some absolutely fantastic work in the short period of time that it's been in place. We just cannot afford to lose that work and not to continue, particularly as we're already tonight talking about flooding, and we're going to be talking about air quality. So I just want to raise extreme concerns about that. Thank you.
It's noted, Councillor Page. Yeah?
I'm not sure I can answer that.
No, it's just for you to note, that's all.
Yeah. Thank
you. And next is Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. As many of you may know, Chobham residents are referred to as web footers because we are so low lying, and there are a number of drainage items that are still outstanding. And I've got two questions. Are we still on track for those to be completed by April 2021? Because I'm certainly aware of a couple of issues that are still outstanding. And my understanding, and I would like to thank the officers for their support on this and their ongoing communication on some of the issues that I've raised. It's been fantastic, and I'm very grateful. So please pass on my thanks. But there does seem to be a bit of a sticking point with the Environment Agency, in that I understand, for example, with the work to be done on the Sangs in Chobham, we're still waiting for permission from the Environment Agency, and I know from the communication that I've had with officers, they have been very proactive in trying to get that through. So I just wondered whether or not it is within our gift to escalate anything, to give support to the officers that are trying to do their best, to try and get the Environment Agency to respond in some form of timely manner.
Well, you'll know, Victoria, that we've got Wayne, who's an absolute superstar, and we do share him with Surrey County Council, in fact. So he sort of gets direction from two authorities. I know that there's been negotiation with the Environment Agency. I don't have the detail to hand. I don't know if one of the officers can support me with a view on that. Jenny?
I don't know the details either, but I'll be honest, we're pretty low on the Environment Agency's priorities at the moment, but we can keep pushing, and that's really all we can do. And I'm quite happy, Councillor Wheeler, if we to get together with you and perhaps Councillor Page and draft a letter that we could send to them to ask them for a bit more support.
I think if Councillor Page is up for that as well, it would be very helpful. In particular, you know, not directly related to flooding, but we've got Japanese knotweed. And again, that sits with the responsibility of the Environment Agency. And my understanding is that's not something that generally goes away and requires ongoing and measured treatment. And it's directly adjacent to, I think it's the Addlestone bourne rather than the Halebourne. So yeah, that would be great. And who's the best person to organise that meeting?
So I'll take that away with Jenny. We'll have that meeting, but I also endorse the fact that we will write to the Environment Agency, and I'd be grateful if that's minuted so that we don't forget.
Thank you. And if you kindly make a note of it, please, Officer Simpson. Okay, that's a lot on that section, I think. There are no more questions, no more hands up. So, Ms. Councillor Page, you can take a break.
Thank you.
Moving on, agenda item 5. Environment and Health, Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Madam Mayor. Good evening, members. Good evening, officers. The report you have in front of you, pages 17 through 26, is to provide a progress report on the environment and health portfolio. The recommendation is the committee is requested to consider the draft annual plan for 21-22 and submit comments to be considered by the executive before a final version is agreed. This is I hope you've had time to go through the report. It's a very detailed report. It's a wide and varied portfolio, one I think that is so important in the world in which we live currently, and I'll go through about that in more detail. So the background is the environment and health portfolio covers a wide range of public-facing services. The services covered are air quality, older people services, emergency planning and business continuity, environmental health, waste and recycling, health and wellbeing. If we just look at those individually, I'll give you some highlights and then I'm going to pass over to the officers. I'd first of all like to thank Darren Williams and James Robinson for all the help and I think time management they've given myself with all of their teams. And even during these times, it's been very rewarding and I've certainly learned an awful lot of the services that we provide as a council. So let's take first of all air quality. Well, air quality is actually going to, we have a statutory duty to monitor air quality in the borough and submit an annual air quality status report. And that's going to be covered in the next part of this agenda. So moving on to older people's services, that's covered on page 18 of this report. And you'll see a definition of all the older people's services that we actually are providing. And also, members, you'll be aware that we only recently agreed to go into partnership with Runnymede Borough Council and all the things that we're going to be able to do in partnership with that council, which I think are very exciting. And you'll see some of the figures through this report as regards how things have started to develop. Emergency planning and business continuity, well, where are we at the moment? That's covered on page 19 and all the services and the extra work and the response that we've done as regards the COVID-19 and all the superb work again that the officers have had to respond to in regards to that and also maintain their actual duties as well. Environmental health, that's again, there's a breakdown of environmental health and the services that are provided there within that framework. But again, I would highlight a couple of issues here with during COVID, the amount of things that have happened and the amount of notices that the environmental health team have been dealing with. For instance, with people staying at home, you'd be surprised at how many bonfires they've had to respond to, how many rubbish and refuse. And I think if those people looked at their local web pages today, will see that there are various Facebook things, certainly in Chobham once again, with rubbish and fly tipping that we've been responding to. So complaints basically have doubled during the time people are spending at home. The amount of notices that have also with environmental health been issued, for instance, there's been over 170 non-compliant notices, of which there have been 38 premises have been closed down. The officers hopefully will be able to answer any further points and raise any further points that I may miss. Waste and recycling, again, we've come forward with a huge amount of initiatives over the last year with waste and recycling, and also making our waste and recycling contractors a lot more responsive and working with them. I'd also like to point out that during the COVID-19 epidemic, let's not forget, these people, if we talk about waste and recycling, they're working in cabs, teams of 3 and sometimes 4 in close ties. We have maintained as a council, and I really, this is a cross-party group. I'm not, that's what it's all about. It's serving our residents. That's what we're here to do. We've maintained those services. There are many councils that haven't maintained those services. We even maintained the services on the Christmas tree collections, which I think is something we should be extremely proud of. I'm not just referring to the Christmas tree, collections, but the fact that we've maintained those services. Yes, indeed, there's been missed bins. Yes, indeed, we've had sickness and absences over during this time. But the actual ability to comply, to fulfil the contract and maintain those services has been maintained. But I look forward to questions in a moment. Health and wellbeing. Well, again, we're working in partnership with the Frimley Health and Integrated team there, and that's covered on page 24. I know that our acting CEO, Tim Passion, is with us this evening, and he'll hopefully be able to come forward to answer any difficult questions. Those are the ones that I can't answer. And indeed, we also have our officers this evening here, James Robinson, and I'm not sure whether Darren's been able to join us. He may be under another prefix, but hopefully, if not, we will take away any questions you may have that we are unable to answer. But members, that's sort of just a brief summary of the report. As I say, it's covered in pages 17 through 26. And I would just add that we are this extraordinary time that we're going through. The officers have maintained not only their own work, but they have gone to the front to maintain services to our residents. That's our residents. That's not cross-party, it's our residents during this time, and that will continue. So I thank, once again, Darren Williams and James Robinson, and I do hope that on behalf of all of us here this evening, members, before I take your questions, you will agree that we actually submit a vote of thanks to all our council officers for all the superb work they continue to do during these extraordinary times. Mr. Chairman, I hope I didn't ramble on for too long. My wife's always saying I do ramble on for too long, but it is important. We are in extraordinary times, and I'm quite happy now to take questions from members. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Mansfield. I agree with you. Officers have done an exceptionally good job, so we should applaud them in a silent way, and so we know they are recognized for the hard work. And as a council, we should be very proud of what they have done, given the circumstances and the pandemic we are currently going through. So well done to the officers. And before I let the other members ask a question, I want to ask Councillor Mansfield, and on all the people, we have sort of gone into partnership, or we have subcontracted. In fact, we have transferred the whole of the older people facility to Runnymede. How are we thinking, or how are you thinking of actually reporting going forward? Because we have to pay the staff, everybody's there now, so technically. And how are you going to, what's your plan to report back to the council about our residents?
Right, well, basically we'll continue to report as we are, but as we grow and develop the services that we have with the council that we're able to provide, we in fact, as part of that partnership agreement, we agreed to set up a committee, a cross-party committee, to actually monitor all the services and to actually evaluate how those services go forward and how we can actually extend and provide more services in partnership and make better use of our resources in partnership with Runnymede Borough Council.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if our acting CEO, Tim Passion, would like to add any further points. Thank you.
Mr. Passion, would you like to add something there on the reporting side, which is about our residents? How are we going to report back?
Thank you, Chairman. I noticed that Darren Williams has also got his hand up as well. But Councillor Mansfield is absolutely right. There will be a partnership board which will agree certain indicators, and these will be reported in the same way to this P&F committee as we go forward throughout the year. Members and residents probably will not notice much of a difference from the partnership, because apart from improving of service, of course, because the teams will still be operating out of Surrey Heath House. You will still see them, and you probably won't see a lot of difference. It's really in the back office that the differences will be. But I don't know whether Mr. Williams would like to add any more to that.
If I may, if I may, please. Yep. So the partnership board, Councillor Mansfield has reported back at executive and has agreed that it will actually be cross-party. So what I'm really waiting for at the moment are the people who are going to form that partnership board. I believe 3 elected members are invited from each council. And the first thing that we will do is arrange the first meeting to approve our departmental business unit plan for next year, which is a requirement at Runnymede to have it by department, but this time it will be written for our partnership. And that will come before the members of the working group, of the governance board, sorry, for their consideration, for questions and for agreement. Within that document will be a set of proposed key performance indicators, which will again be agreed by members from across both councils. And those will be the KPIs that we will look to report on by borough and as a collective partnership. So you'll be able to see the totality of the activity, but also what it means for residents in your area and for the services that you as a council fund. In terms of what Tim said, it's absolutely right that hopefully you won't notice a difference in terms of on the ground day to day. But of course, within the partnership agreement, it says that I am required to report to you as a collective of members require. So I am always available to come forward with information that you request of me. So hopefully that gives a few channels as to how we will make sure you're kept up to date. And of course, if there's anything linked to budgets, recruitment, etc., that needs a vote at executive or at any other committee, then of course we will present an item for your consideration. So I hope that helps.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Thank you. Right, now questions. I'll start with Councillor Garrett, whose hand was first. Thereafter Councillor Tapper, then Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor
one question and then just one comment, really. It was a very good report. Under these times, lots of positive information. My questions reference page 25.3, environmental health. It's just really, obviously, as you highlighted, lots of people are at home at the moment, and I'm just looking at the noise and pollution statistics, 475 from April until to date. I'm just wondering how that compares to a previous year, just to see, obviously there's lots of people at home, lots of noises going on. So has the complaints gone up or is it about the same? Just sort of a little bit of history on that, really.
I don't have the data comparing it to a previous year. Perhaps one of the officers may be able to comment on that, please.
Yeah. Before we pass it on, before we pass it on, Councillor Mansfield, I would recommend that future reports actually carry comparisons to previous years. That will help the other councillors to understand whether it's improved or not. So I mean, just an idea for you to consider seriously.
Thank you. I'll note it, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, we'll certainly be doing that in future meetings. Mr. Robinson is on the line, and it's his sort of area that comes under. But as far as I understand, that there were a lot more complaints during the first lockdown, mainly concerned with bonfires. We had loads of complaints of bonfires. But I don't know whether Mr. Robinson would like to add to that.
Would you like to say something?
Good evening, everybody. Yes, they roughly doubled. I think last year they're about 255, so it's over 400, nearly 500.
Okay.
So, yeah,
that's fine. So as we suspected then, because okay, that's perfectly fine. Thank you very much for that. And the point was something that it wasn't until I was reading the notes for the chair's briefing that suddenly became really clear to me. Was it's on page 26 and it relates to the number of meals at home products served in the year. And you look at the annual figure and it's 35,000. Now, when I first looked at it, I didn't actually take on board that Q1 was 16,622, but then Q2 is 16,393, and those figures need to be added together rather than the one after it, which is the alarms, which is obviously a continuous figure. So that means in the first 2 quarters, we've done 32,000 for an annual target of 35,000. So that has got to be, slaps on the back. That's obviously a lot of work's been done there. And obviously,
I'm guessing moving forward, if we continue with those figures, we're going to be well over target. I mean, obviously, I'm guessing there's manning issues potentially with that, and costing, budgeting issues with that as well. And I know obviously budgets elsewhere will have been moved, etc. So I'd just like to hear some sort of just some feedback on that. Obviously it is a lot more, and are we able to cope moving forward with the structure we've got in place? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Yes, indeed, we're able to cope. And I think it also gives an overview really of the times that we're living in, and the times that are going forward due to people, financial conditions as well. And again, that's something I thank the team for with Darren, and they've been working, over Christmas and New Year. The work and the numbers are growing. And this is where I think we as a council will be able to develop even further. And that's some work that I know Darren will be bringing forward in the future. Darren may wish to make some more comments. Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams, would you like to comment on that, please?
If I may, thank you. Firstly, to reflect the credit to where it, or deflect it to where it needs to be. My job is writing on pieces of paper, and all the way through the pandemic, we've had people going through vulnerable residents' front doors, and they are really the people who deserve all the credit. So, from my personal thanks to my own team, they really do pull out all the stops for the residents. In terms of the figures, you're right, we will overshoot the target considerably, which is great news. And I think it reflects, sometimes, as much as I try to rein it into a degree, our willingness to say yes. We don't put blocks in front, we find solutions to help residents. And that is really led by, many of you will know Arline Poulter, and that is very much her mantra and her approach, and it's reflected through the team. In terms of our capacity going forward, we operate with 4 meals vans, which we lease from the supplier. Now, the numbers, if they continue to grow or grew much more, we would either be in a position where we had to request additional funding for a 5th vehicle, or what we will be able to do through the partnership is reroute all of our schedules in order to utilize the capacity of the vehicles that are based in Runnymede. So as an example, can you create a route that covers our outlying villages and the neighbouring areas of Runnymede over the borough boundaries, which then create capacity and create a more efficient service? And that is part of the premise of why we want to work in partnership. There are ideas as how we develop it further. We launched during the pandemic a tea service, which meant that as well as a hot lunch, we were taking a meal for the evening for people. That hasn't been formally launched yet and will be probably at the start of 21-22. So again, there could be an extra demand for an additional service. We intend to develop the offer to cover the Bracknell Forest area, which will be our commercial income generative arm to offset the cost of the service to our residents of Surrey Heath. And also we will be rerouting the booking process for meals in Runnymede actually into Surrey Heath House, reflecting the fact that we're going to use our best people and our quality in the right areas of the partnership. So Arline Poulter and her team will actually lead on meals for both Runnymede and Surrey Heath going forward. So there are opportunities. We do need to temper it against the potential that post-lockdown and pandemic, if it ever gets achieved, that some people may step away from the service because they'll be able to self-serve in a different way. However, knowing the commitment of Arline and the team, I would expect the numbers to stay to a degree consistent to what they are now. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler, please.
Thank you, Chair. Unsurprisingly, I have a number of questions. So first and foremost, I'd like to, I think like all the other councillors, extend my thanks. I have relied very heavily on the services and the welfare services that this borough is able to offer for my residents. And I have found the staff without fail caring, responsive, and just simply wonderful. And that actually brings me to a special point of thanks to Jane Boytott, who has taken on board the fact that in Chobham, West End and parts of Windlesham, we are not part of Frimley Health and Care integrated care system. And I have to say, I am really disappointed to see nothing in here about the services that we are able to offer my residents through partnerships with other care organisations. And that again is a testament to some of the officers who have worked really hard to support me in getting services out to my residents. But I think we are doing a disservice to the residents that I represent, or a large portion of the residents that I represent. And David, residents that you represent as well, by not having that Surrey Heartlands information provided to us in the same way that we do with Frimley Health, because it's not fair, it's not right, and all of those things.
Can I get Councillor Mansfield to answer that, please?
I actually do share those concerns as well, and that has been raised. And I think there's ongoing, discussions about that, because I don't want to get in too much into the NHS, because obviously I have to declare that at the moment I have returned back to the NHS, and I'm currently working in the NHS, but from retirement. So all I will say on that, and just for a pointed note, Mr. Chairman, I do note that because obviously declarations and things, but that is something that has been raised, and I know that there are discussions going on as regards borders, etc.
Thank you. If you sorry, Mr. Passion, you want to add something to it?
Yes, Chairman. In fact, it's not included in the report, but actually there's a huge amount of work we do with the Surrey Heartlands. The SCG that I attend on a weekly basis. The SCG, most of what's been discussed, particularly dealing with the COVID response, is mostly Surrey Heartlands information that we get, and it's only recently that I've been getting Frimley ICS work. And of course, with our partnership that we have with Runnymede, of course, Runnymede is within the Surrey Heartlands. So a lot of the work we do, in fact, Darren attends a lot of the meetings they have in the Surrey Heartlands ICS, and he's got his hands up, and he's going to.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Williams, would you like to add something to this? And also, before you carry on, can we, Councillor Mansfield, can we make a note of this and sort of include that in the next sort of report, so it all comes to us rather than trying to go through a long rigmarole of conversation here?
Okay. Will do. I'll note. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Chair.
Mr. Williams.
Just to offer some assurance, I actually sit as part of the North West Surrey Alliance, formerly titled Integrated Care Partnership Board, representing Runnymede, and I also represent the part of Surrey Heath that would fit in North West Surrey. So when I sit at that table, either in their delivery board, in their partnership board, or as the lead for prevention on their model of care work stream, I am also considerate of the areas of Surrey Heath that are included in North West Surrey. Good examples of that are the hospital discharge service, which has just received renewed funding in North West Surrey, is actually used for Surrey Heath. I led on the social prescribing service development of that with primary care across 38 GP practices. That includes obviously the Chobham practice and the residents who go there. And just at the moment, we're working on an oximetry project to support those at home with COVID, with digital assessments of oxygen levels. So there are projects which will link to those residents in outlying areas. But of course, I'm happy to feedback on any developments there to members of those outlying areas as well.
These are things I think we should actually incorporate it in future reports. We are very clear as to the services we provide, and outlying areas, like not outlying areas within the borough, but where Councillor Wheeler represents, is also recorded into our reports. Thank you.
Thank you. If I can just, sorry.
Councillor Wheeler, next question, please.
Thank you. If I can just come back on that, part of my frustration is the fact that I know how much work that officers are doing. And Darren in particular, I know how much work you're doing and how well you're thought of across the areas. But from a resident's point of view, when they look at this, we're invisible. And I know we're not invisible. I'm sure that sometimes some of the officers wish that we were invisible. And I know that we're not. And I know how much work has been done to integrate us, but it's not represented here. And that is a real pity. Dan, I'm really pleased. One of my other questions that I was going to ask excuse me, related to discharge. And last time we had quite a long report from Councillor Chapman, who was the portfolio holder at the time, about the discharge and our involvement in discharge and our involvement in making, in particular, our meals at home service available. From what you've just said, I think that obviously is still happening. But again, it would be nice to have some figures on that, because it would be nice to see how that has changed from last time. I think would be really helpful. And then also just to pick up on the social prescribing, which is quite low. And again, thank you for answering that. That covers both Surrey Heath and North West Surrey, or whatever my area is called this week. But it's how do we and can we maybe access that? So I know that I spent a lot of time, for example, promoting our meals at home service locally on social media and making sure that residents were aware of it. How can we help to make these services more successful by making residents aware of how to access them? So the community bus services is something that's been nice social media that's come out recently on that, which we've shared, and the comms team at the borough have done a really good job of sharing. But how do we access some of these other things? So the handy person service referrals, that sort of thing, which seem a little bit low, certainly in terms of our annual target. What help can we as members give you on that? And then after that, I've just got two more little ones. They're only short, I promise.
Councillor Wheeler, can we actually keep our questions as questions rather than statements, because it does
so
take
the
up our
question
time.
So the question, very simply put, then, is what support can we as members give you to promote these services that we put a lot of investment into, and we're really good at running as a borough, to make sure that they are used more?
Okay, thank you. Now, Councillor Mansell, would you like to answer that, or would you like to pass it on to an officer?
No, thank you very much. That's a good question, and thank you, Councillor Wheeler, for your comments earlier on, and your thanks to the team. That's a good point, and I think that's one of the great things about the partnership that we're going to be putting together with Runnymede, is all these new opportunities and things that we will be bringing forward, is getting them in the right direction and getting them out there in the knowledge of our residents. I mean, we can do things via the website, but the answer would be that not everyone, uses the internet, etc., etc. So we've got the Heath scene, we've got the borough notice boards. So it's also, it's for us also as councillors, again, whichever party, to actually get this message across. And I think that when we get our group together, the committee that we're going to be putting together of cross-party members, that'll be one of the first tasks, is to get all this new information, all these new opportunities. Darren mentioned one of the new Meals and Wills services that we've started to bring on, and will be rolled out officially, during this year. And there's many, many more. This partnership is going to open up a huge range of opportunities, and it will be, once we get that committee together, we'll be working to find new ways of bringing this to the residents. I mean, if you reflect also on waste services and things, how we get the message of the different waste streams and how we can get waste picked up and everything, it's always a challenge, because you can never entirely get the message out, because there's not one method. But by getting the committee together, I think we'll be able to certainly, work together to come up with some new initiatives. But I'm sure Darren may have some more, or indeed Tim may wish to add.
Thank you. Other question?
Thank you. I suppose it's a bit of throwback. We've mentioned several times now about the cross-party committee, and my understanding from one of the other councillors in our group is that this was decided by the executive quite some time ago, and yet Darren is still waiting to hear who those three members are. So I'm just going to put that out there for the members of the executive that are here on this meeting, to say, where are we, how do we move it forward, and why has it taken so long? The other one relates to business continuity, and that is the fact that still we have local resilience forums, And I still think that we have quite a lot of work to do with engaging those resilience forums in the mock sessions and things that we undertake. I'm part of the Job and Resilience group. I have to say, as far as I'm aware, and the chair of that group would have let me know, I'm sure, I know that Councillor Ted is on this as well. As far as I'm aware, we've not been involved in it once. And that is missing out a large portion of people who can work very well in terms of resilience and continuity. I'm not talking here about COVID, I'm talking about other resilience. So if I could please just make that plea again. It's not the first time we've made it. We've made it a number of times before, that actually where you've got local resilience groups, they need to be better integrated in some way. And then my final one is a plea, and that is, can we as a council put out thanks, specific thanks to our refuse collectors who have kept going. I don't think many of us as members have had complaints from our local residents about any drop-in service. They've kept going. They've run an excellent service, and they provide community services over and above it as well. And I would like to request that we put out a formal thanks via our social media channels to that particular group.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Mansfield, can you kindly make a note of it and action that accordingly, please?
Noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on, Councillor Tapper, please keep the question as short as possible. We are coming to the hour. I'd rather not have statements, just questions, so we can get clear answers and move on, because it's already 1 hour, and I've got the next section is like 200 odd pages. So I'm not too keen to hang around.
Thank you, Chair. Duly noted. No, it's not a statement. It is a question. As most councillors will probably be aware, our residents have been severely inconvenienced by a month-long absence of the ability to report to JWS problems and where they are, what needs to be done through a failure of their IT systems. Could we ask JWS to report to us as soon as possible on the causes of this problem, confirmation of rectification of the problem, and assurances as to the future resilience of that service, so that we don't have a month-long unavailability of a critical service to our customers in future. Thank you.
Councillor Mansfield, do you want to note that and move on?
Yeah, I note that and take those comments on.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Now, Councillor White.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Right, okay, so it wasn't working last time. Actually, my question was very similar to Councillor Tapper's. It's just that Surrey Heath put out a notice to say that the Joint Waste Services website was back online and you could report things, but certain people on Facebook are actually saying that this is not available. Can you confirm, Councillor Mansfield, that the website is back up and running, please?
It has been back up and running. However, they still are having issues with it. But as far as I'm aware, this afternoon it was back on.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Wren, you're the last person on the queue, rather.
Great, thank you. So very quickly, a big thanks to Meals on Wheel team. They're a fantastic team. I love the work you do, especially how quickly you reacted to the children that needed feeding during the October half term. I just want to add or ask a question around the Surrey Heath CCG has asked us to consider focusing on priority area 4 obesity, including healthy diet and physical activity. And I just wondered how that was going to look. Obviously, that is quite a big issue with current times, is 8% roughly of people suffering critical illness from COVID-19 are obese. And about 63% of the population in England is either overweight or obese. And as someone that was formerly obese, I think this is an issue that needs to be addressed in a manner that actually helps the community and is done in a productive way. I'm just curious about what plans there is to communicate that with residents.
Mansfield?
Thank you very much. No, superb question. I referred basically to page 24 of the report under the health and wellbeing, that the services delivered by departments across the council are, they're obviously important, and that basically we are working with public health leads to develop an obesity project as part of the annual plan going forward. And indeed, this is all to do with our wellbeing framework that we're also putting together to cover such issues as smoking, reducing health inadequacies and obesity, etc. So that is something that we are doing.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. I see there are two hands up. Councillor Wheeler, do you have any more questions, or it's an okay? I think you need to put that down. Thank you very much. It's an hour, and the next section is a little bit bigger. I don't know how long it will last. The number of pages we have is something like 200 plus pages on a printed version. Before we close short, take a short break, I just want to make a recommendation to the executive and also to the democratic services to actually look at these reports very carefully, because we got 200, I mean, on a printed version, it's a lot of pages. Yeah, on an iPad or virtually, it's not. It's pages after pages. So if you're going to print it, I mean, we are going to talk about environment and all the rest of it that comes along. It doesn't make any sense to print it. So for me, I like printed version, but for 292 pages, I don't want a printed version. So maybe we should consider reducing this into a summary and then getting a verbal report and minuting it. It's up to the exec and the officers to decide how you want to present it. Yep. I would recommend that you try and reduce the number of pages. Okay, let's take a short break for 5 minutes and come back. Thank you.
I'll see you in another hour or two or three. Wow.
If you're ready to roll, perfect. Councillor Hawkins, we heard you're having dinner.
No, he's not.
I was just kidding you, Edward. Okay, let's move on. If you're ready, I think everyone's back. Anyone not back? Valerie is not back. Adrian is not back from a councillor point of view. Councillor Officer Livingston has joined us. Perfect. And everyone else is back. Okay, let's move on. Are we ready? Yes. Since I did not have any objections, off I go. Item number 6. Councillor Mansfield, you're back in operation again.
Thank you, Miss.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say, it's an officer report, Chairman, if you'd like me to introduce it.
Yes, perfect. Go ahead.
Yeah. Is that okay, Councillor Mansfield?
I was just going to refer to that point.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So Chairman, the 200 pages, I'm afraid, part of that is because of the annual status report that we're having to submit. I suppose in the future we could just give a link to that onto the website. But it is a very long and comprehensive report. And I don't really intend to go into any detail, but to just basically table the report and invite any questions, which the author of the report, Mr. Robinson, is here with us this evening, and I'm sure he'll be able to answer that. But just as a way of introduction, this is a legal requirement for us to monitor the air quality in the borough. We've been doing that for about 25 years now. I was doing that quite regularly before Mr. Robinson came over and took that role on. We have to submit a report through to DEFRA once a year, and that's our annual status report, and that's part of the 200 pages that is in the report. But Chairman, we'll be pleased to answer any questions either now or at any later point, that if anybody wishes to contact myself and Mr. Robinson at a later day, we'd be pleased to answer that. So
thank you, Mr. Passion. I mean, that's a very good idea to provide links for this. And Mr. Robinson, I presume you were responsible for producing this report. I haven't read every page of it. From what I've sort of fast read, it's very good, excellent stuff in there. I'm sure the people who will be better knowledge will be able to understand a little bit more than I can, because I understand debits and credits, hence the limitation. Questions? Okay. Miss Councillor Wren and then Councillor Tapper.
No, sorry, I didn't have any questions at this time. It might be a raised hand from earlier. Let me turn.
Tapper.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I read the summary of the report. I must admit I didn't read the full report. Very interested to see the comment in item 1.2, page 27, in fact, page 28. The reports that the particulates level, which is probably one of the things which is of biggest concern to most people, appears in fact to be from things about which we can do absolutely nothing. It's nothing to do with road traffic, it says at the top of page 28, but is from sources which are totally outside of our control. I'm just wondering whether, therefore, the action that we are doing in trying to monitor this serves any useful purpose, particularly in view of the fact that as we move forward more and more towards electric vehicles, from which brake dust residue is far reduced, because most of the braking is used for energy regeneration. Effectively, the electric motor being turned into reverse, made a generator, and therefore you don't touch your brakes. Whether or not this is something that maybe we can abandon even earlier and save money doing so. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Officer Robinson, would you like to answer that, or would Mr. Passion like to answer that?
I think I can answer, the best position to answer that. Thank you. An interesting question. Yeah, particulates or dust, the major proportion of that is not from road traffic, as I've alluded to in my report. And going forward, there is absolutely no point in measuring dust when we are compliant right across the borough, including that right next to the motorway. So it is one of our actions when we get 3 years sort of standard data to rescind and stop monitoring particulate matters. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Wheeler, then Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. This is actually a question which I know has been sent in advance by Councillor Bates that I'm asking on his behalf. On page 37, 1.39, I note that, or we note that none of the schools in Surrey decided to take part in the air quality themed theatre and education that was being promoted by the county. Councillor Bates's question is, was there a cost that was associated with this workshop, and what were the schools expected to do for it? And then I have a supplementary question to that, and that is that were local members again made aware of this in advance? A lot of us have very good relationships with our schools and would have been able to promote it and maybe bring it forward on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. In answer to the question, there was no cost to the schools. It was something that we had funded at borough level, was delivered through the county council, and they used an external contractor sort of performing art stuff in schools. The only requirement of the schools were to provide the pupils and the time for them to sit and watch the presentations or theatres and the workshops and participate in any of the activities which were limited to sort of scientific based, collecting maybe some tubes outside the schools. So there was very little, there was no expenditure required by the schools themselves. In terms of were local members informed, we didn't inform them, but because it was a county-led function, it's something that we thought that the county council would have promoted through their contacts.
So, from a chairman's point of view, the question has been raised very clearly. County has not promoted it. Am I right, Councillor Wheeler and Councillor Garrett? From the shaking of the heads, it seems to be the case. Maybe Councillor Mansfield, you are a county councillor as well. Maybe you should take it up with the county as well.
I think we can note that and indeed take that up on your behalf. Yes.
Sorry, Chair, may I come back? Could I ask, please, that we're actually informed and that members of this committee have the letter that is sent to county and also the response circulated to us so that we can be kept aware of it, because it seems to me as though we put funding into something that wasn't adequately promoted or supported. And if none of Surrey Heath schools took part of it, I know that Councillor Garrett is involved with local schools, and I'm quite sure he would have been aware of it. It seems as though it was good money thrown after bad. Thank you.
Very valid point. Very valid point. I mean, I live near Crawley Ridge at the school, and I understand the Crawley Hill has one. To be honest, I didn't know about it. Came to know about it last year. I think the same kind of point was raised last year as well. So if we can actually get county to actually try and do something, that'll be very useful. Councillor Mansfield. Yeah, thank you.
Will do, Mr. Chairman. I will speak to the team tonight, and following this, we'll send some emails and get a letter drawn up. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, next is Councillor Hawkins. You're muted, Edward. You're muted.
Right, sorry, thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Firstly, my complaint that, this is a fantastic report. I've seen a number of these, so I have an idea where to look. And I know, James, we've had discussions over air quality and what have you in the past. I still maintain that to have the air treatment and the speed measures on the Blackwater Valley Road is an act of lunacy when we should have that on the M3. Particularly now, there is a growing debate on the safety of smart motorways. Now, I see Councillor Betton is shaking his hand because I know he has very strong views on some of this, but I still maintain it should be the M3 should be the major focus, because that goes through the major population centres of Surrey Heath. However, I know I'm not going to get anywhere on that one. Question to James. I understood, but I can't see it. And I'm very encouraged to see the falls in the particulates and everything else along my patch, if you like. But I thought that we had a monitoring station at the entrance to Frimley Park Hospital. Now, there has been no queuing recently on there, but that was to pick up the traffic, and that was to be used as part of the evidence, if you like, evidence base for the eventual restructuring of the entrance into the hospital. But I can't see any evidence of a monitoring station. Is there one there, or is it on the other side by the Grove? If I could ask that question through you, Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Yeah, there is a monitoring tube on the into the hospital. It was there
which one is
primarily
that?
for the purposes of Frimley Park Hospital.
I know, sorry, it's on page 35, which on table 3, I presume, but what does it?
It's probably not on that report because we didn't put it there. I was just about to explain. It was initially put there as part of the works for the Blackwater Valley Road, and then beginning of 2020, when that work was completed, I then put a permanent one in there. So that will be reported in the next annual status report. So that's why it's not in the statistics. But we expanded the network at the same time. So there's one by the Grove and there's another one on the entrance road itself, just to tie it all.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Councillor Garrett, then it's Councillor Betton.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to go back to the point made by Councillor Wheeler. I don't want to start county bashing, but I found this a couple of times recently where stuff supposedly come to schools, and it's never been seen. I happen to be chair of governors, as you quite rightly say, 3 schools on the Old Dean, and I am governor at Collingwood, and I have never heard of this. And it's not the first time I've heard stuff has not come through. So, and I know for a fact that the 3 schools that I'm chair of governors are really into their science stuff, because it's a prerequisite these days as being one of the subjects they need to be really into. So, and is on the curriculum. So I would suggest that county might need to do something again, but this time county might need to send it, make sure they send it to the right people, or I wish to say if they sent it at all. And that's I would love to see when this was sent out and who it was sent to, because that's 4 schools I'm involved in and I've not seen any of it. So yeah, just a point.
Mr. Chairman, if I can come back on that question, please.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, just if it actually, it clearly states that the schools that were contacted, it refers to in the report, declined the offer. So if you give me time, Councillor Garrett, I will find out which schools were contacted, and I will give a reply to the chairman.
In which case, Councillor Mansfield, can I just off the back of that say, it may be they want to approach some different schools that might be interested, and I can give you 4 schools that would certainly be interested.
Yeah, absolutely. I welcome that. Thank you. But I will get this part of the information first to the chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Mansfield. Next is Councillor Betton.
Thank you, Chairman. You can blame Councillor Hawkins for some of this. Strangely, Edward, I agree with most of what you said. I was going to take this up outside the meeting, but I would, now that we've got my teeth into it, on 1.3, there is an incorrect statement where it says there's no threshold concentration below which there are no adverse health effects. That's demonstrably not true. There is a no effect concentration for anything and everything. You just have to find it. I'm glad that we have decided that PM10s and PM2.5s and bacteria and viruses and everything else should be dropped. Another year's worth of data would be worthwhile having the data to submit to say that we don't need to do this. The other thing is...
if you refer us to the page, if you refer the members to the page, please, while you're talking.
Page 28. 1.3, second paragraph down. It is the sentence beginning on the 3rd line.
Great.
The other thing is nitrogen dioxide, which is what we are primarily concerned about. And looking through the report, and I take exception to the chairman in that I think getting all the information is really important. You wouldn't like to see an accounts on a couple of pages because you couldn't do your job. Do we know, and I put the caveat that I do know, where the 40 micrograms per cubic meter came from? It came from the World Health Organization, and the value is set to protect the health of asthmatic children living in urban areas. When they're walking about, going to and from school, 40 micrograms per cubic meter should not affect them adversely. Like the Supreme Court decided a couple of weeks ago that there was a little girl who died in London on the South Circular Road, and pollution was put down as a contributory cause of her death. It's kids like that 40 micrograms per cubic meter is designed to protect. For you, me, and most of us sitting here, 40 micrograms per cubic meter has no adverse effect at all. Nitrogen dioxide is a gas. It dissolves in the water lining the lung, and it forms nitric acid. And nitric acid is the problem. But we have a very large amount of capacity to deal with that at low levels. It's not a problem for us. It's a problem for asthmatics, especially children. Now, the last time I looked, people don't go walking up and down the M3. Edward Hawkins said quite rightly that a lot of this monitoring is a waste of time. And it is, because we are not in an urban conurbation most of the time where you don't get wind, you don't get the build-up because of the buildings, because of stationary traffic.
Thank you. Can I get the officer to respond to that? Because we want to, of course, I'll come back to you, Councillor Betton, but maybe give a chance for the officer to respond to that, or Mr. Passion to respond to that. So I don't know why you choose these reports. I've got 40 cubic meter or whatever it is. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, thank you for that inquiry. I'm not quite sure I understand what you're alluding to, but where we have our diffusion tubes to monitor NOx is at places what they call of residential exposure. So they're as near as or equivalent to where people live. They're not necessarily all along the roads. That would be pointless. So in those instances where we do have them, we use them as a check, just to make sure what levels are, and then we compute backwards to the residential. So
just to add something there, is it a legal requirement, this the 40 cubic, whatever it is?
40 micrograms per cubic meter.
Micrograms per cubic air.
It's a limit set by the World Health Organization.
Okay. Is it a legal requirement?
Yes, it's enshrined in the Environment Act.
Yeah, okay. But it relates to urban areas. You know, we are not those areas. If you took your measurements away from, you know, next to the road, where back people actually live, you would find it much, much lower, because the nitrogen oxide reacts with moisture, any moisture, and it's gone. Then the reason I bring it up and the reason I'm batting on about it now is because a lot of this report is talking about future work and future expenditure. And at a time when money is tight, I think it will be much better spent doing other things rather than concentrating on particulates that we have no control over and that don't do anything anyway, and gases that are related to crawling traffic in built-up areas in terms of health risk. We may have high levels, but they are not a danger to our residents.
Mr. Passion and Mr. Robinson, would you take that away? Because I do know my friend, Councillor Betton. He actually is a specialist in this subject. Maybe three of you should get together and try and see whether we are applying these measurements to our needs, to Surrey Heath, rather than taking a worldwide measurement and trying to apply it to the Surrey Heath where it's not relevant. It's a very important point he raises. Yeah, we may be doing something which is just for the sake of doing it. I mean, what's the point?
Well, it's the law. It's the point.
Chairman, if I could come in, and I think Mr. Robinson and myself would absolutely agree with everything that Councillor Betton is saying, but where we actually monitor is prescribed, and the measurements which, as Mr. Robinson was saying, a lot of the measurements that we do are near residential properties. The one on the A331 that myself and Councillor Mrs. Chapman was very involved with for quite some time is because a direction order was served on us and Rushmore Borough Council and Guildford Borough Council, and we basically had this government direction that we had to carry out that monitoring. But yeah, the most important thing is that is to be monitoring where people actually are living. I don't know whether Mr. Robinson wants to add it, but we're very happy to take that outside the meeting.
I think it's a good idea because Councillor Betton does have experience. That's actually, he makes a living out of it, so it's worth your while
But I'm saying we're doing it because it's prescribed, and that's how we have to
understand. Yeah, fully understand. But it's just that, I mean, Councillor Betton, I mean, what I was suggesting on the size of this report is not to reduce it. If he can do it, present it in a different format, virtually or whatever, like Mr. Passion said, provide a link, everyone can go and have a look at it rather than go on a printed version. That's all I was alluding to in that point. Councillor Betton, have you got any more points to raise?
No, those two themes go through the whole report, and those comments serve for everything that follows.
Thank you very much.
Whoever put the hand up, thank you very much. I couldn't find it.
Thank you. And next person is Councillor Hawkins, then Councillor Tepper. You're still muted, Edward. Nope. No, you're still muted.
The host fiddling with me. Right. Stop it. I didn't quite say, as Councillor Betton said, that I thought that the Blackwater Valley was a waste of time. I thought the resource would be better spent on the M3. Now, I use this from personal experience. We live by the M3, and our son, who no longer lives here, he lives somewhere else, has asthma. And I maintain that that asthma, we moved here when he was about 3 or 4, and some days you could see, weather permitting, weather conditions, you could just see a haze hanging over the motorway, a slightly blue haze. And then we hear from Highways for England, or whatever they called themselves in those days, that trees made no difference and they were going to cut the trees down. And that the noise attenuation fences, which Councillor Chapman and I and Councillor Josephine Hawkins fought tooth and nail to get constructed, they weren't going to do anything. And this is why I really do feel, as we were promised originally, that we would have a 50-mile-an-hour limit through Camberley, but we then got instead the so-called safe motorways, which I don't think, well, it's been proven, a lot of debate on that, and I come back, I make no bones about repeating that point, but I do think, and we've got a number of points near us, Prior End is the best one, and that I think from memory, from having looked at the report, Mr. Robinson will be able to confirm immediately, that's the one area that hasn't shown any change. I think that the reading is same now as it was about a year ago. And it is a big thing. The pollution to me has been better since the road surface was installed. Quiet, well, no, it isn't. Quiet, it ain't not. Certainly, we noticed when it was quiet when the snow came. So if we could have snow for 6 months of the year, it'd be fantastic. Then it would be quiet. The other point, Chairman, if I may, will you allow me to come back in when we go on to the council action plan? Because I have a point I would like to make on one of the action points, unless you'd rather I did it now for speed.
Which
It's
page
on
are
page 190 when we get to the...
we are way ahead of the rest of the team here.
I'll just try to move the agenda on for you. If you let me come back in, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I think we'll come back. We'll wait. I'll get all the other questions in and then we'll go to about page 190. Councillor Tepper, question, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Graham, you're muted now. Go for it.
Yeah, that's sorry about that, Chair. The space bar didn't work when I tried to use it. Yes, I have some sympathy with Councillor Hawkins' issues there, but I believe that Councillor Betton, as the acknowledged expert in this area, this is his business after all, would probably confirm that just because there's a blue haze over the motorway doesn't mean that it's caused by nitrogen dioxide. It's more likely diesel fumes. And the problem we have here is lorries, and generally that's the primary problem that we have. And in fact, if we look at item 1.5 1, to which we've been sort of referring during this debate, you'll notice that the reduction to 50 miles an hour on the Blackwater Valley Road resulted in an insignificant, almost non-existent difference in the emission of nitrogen dioxide. And I noticed in the last sentence there that the speed limit is in any case due to be removed in 2022, in view of the fact that it's been proven through the examination of the atmosphere before and after the introduction of the speed limit that it's not produced any noticeable results, but whether the council could apply to have that speed limit reduced earlier rather than later. One other thing on 1.47, which relates to the council promoting the uptake or the introduction of more electric vehicle charging points, particularly in destination charging, that's car parks and things like that, where we're trying to encourage people to come into Camberley to do shopping, and if they're coming in electric vehicles, to have charging points for them to be able to use whilst they're shopping. But it says whilst they're parked for 2 or 3 hours. Could we make sure, please, that any agreement that we have with any of the various different charging networks, presumably it will be them that we will engage with to install these chargers, do in fact make sure that there is a limit on the amount of time that a car may occupy this charger, so that they're not hogging these chargers and leaving them unavailable to more people. Other than that, the only answer would be to introduce more chargers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tepper, Councillor Tepper. Councillor Mansfield, can you kindly make a note of it and take the exec when you get the next opportunity, please? Thank you.
I'll note that. Thank you.
Right. Lastly, Councillor Betten again.
Thank you, Chairman. As an owner of an electric vehicle myself, I would agree entirely with Councillor Tapper, but having spent 2 hours in a Tesco car park charging my car up just enough to get it back to the road that I came off of to get to the charger, could I suggest that if we are going to put chargers in, they are the high amp ones, not trickle chargers. Those you do at home. Ones with we can get you 20, 30, 40% in half an hour is what we need. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Betten. Again, for you to note, Councillor Mansfield.
Yeah, I've noted. Thank you, Councillor Betten, for your comments.
Thank you. Right. If there's no other business on this huge report, and Mr. Robinson, very well done. Thank you very much. Really, I can imagine the amount of hours you must have spent putting this together. Truly, truly fantastic. Lovely pictures as well. So it all goes well together for people like me who can actually get to grips with some of the items here. Thank you. Right, we are moving on to next is, God, where am I? This one, 271. Annual Plan 21-22. Page number 271 for those who are digging through the papers. Item number 7. It's officer report. Mr. Passion, would it? Sorry. Oh, sorry, 190, page 190. Beg your pardon, Edward. I forgot. My apologies.
No. I slid your hand. I noticed the way you tried to flip through there. Nice one. Very quickly, this is another pet theme of mine, where we're talking about safe routes to school and extend travel groups. Surrey Heath Council support the county, provide active encouragement, businesses, etc., and safe routes to school. I would like this committee, please, to agree to send a recommendation to the Surrey Heath Local Area Committee, urging the completion of the crossing at Ravenscote School to help the children walk to the school in safety, rather than use parents driving there and taking the children. It will be better, and that's caused Councillor Wheeler to come in with something, I see, a surprise. But I think it would be safe routes to school to discourage people. We need to have proper safe crossings for our children. And that's the point I really urge this committee, if you would be so kind, Chairman, to promote and push. Thank you.
I would commend that actually 100%. I'm also very keen on having safe crossing near schools and also the 20 mph limits to be truly imposed around schools. I live, like most of you know, I live down Crawley Ridge, and it's a rat run. I mean, it's a nightmare. Truly is a nightmare. So, Councillor Mansfield, if you can kindly make a note of it, take it to the exec so that it can be one way or another implemented, that is crossings around schools. I know you have to work with the local area group and with county. So it's something which you need to push through the exec. Councillor Wheeler, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to fully endorse actually Councillor Hawkins' request to, as a group, for us to write to the local area committee and to a wider point at county around safe crossings for schools. But I think that we need to push for a review of all of our schools. I accept Councillor Hawkins' point. There is 2 different petitions, one for West End that I'm aware of for a safer school crossing, one for Chobham for a safer school crossing, and we have no crossing either in Windlesham for our school. So actually, I think it's time for a cross-borough review of crossing points for all of our schools. And I would be grateful if that could be extended along with the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit and the enforcement of said 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. I can see lots of nods on all of the screens. So it looks like, Chair, as though that would be a recommendation of all members of this group.
I entirely agree with you. I won't ask for a vote on this or anything to that effect. It's a committee, it's a scrutiny stuff. So I'm going to recommend that, Councillor Mansfield, you take it back from the PNF to say, today back to exec to say, this is something the exec should look at it very seriously and come up with some sort of a paper to the full council. Thank you. Of course, you need to work with county. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Right, moving on, page number 271, which is for those who have got the big pack. Draft annual plan. I think I'm going to hand it straight back to Mr. Passion.
Mrs. Livingston, I think, Chairman.
Mr. Livingston.
If she doesn't mind,
Miss
I think
Livingston.
Mrs. Livingston.
Beg your pardon, not Mr. Miss Livingston. My apologies, Louise.
Mrs. Livingston.
No problem,
Mrs.
Chairman.
Livingston.
No problem at all. So I'm bringing forward for consideration to the committee the annual plan for 21-22. Within this, it is actually a draft at this point, and it would be due to go to the executive in March. However, we ask for the committee's comment and anything that they would like changed or added to the document. What we have done is we've looked at the coming year and outlined the key projects that we are looking to achieve during that year, and also outline the key performance measures as well. The way the document is laid out, and when you look at the annex, it lays out the corporate objectives initially, which is numbering 9 for the coming year. And then you've got more specifics by service. And again, it looks at each of the specific items. This document's been put together in consultation with the executive and the portfolio holders, and comment from officers as well. Just to highlight the 9 corporate objectives being looked at. We've got climate change, poverty, both of those coming from new working groups that have been set up recently. Then we have the Camberley Town Centre, the 5-year strategy, the villages, and the work that will come out of the villages working group. Again, work that we're doing with the integrated care system and Surrey Heath Health Alliance, the commercial property strategy, the local plan, and the COVID-19 response and recovery work. If you committee doesn't mind, there was a question that came up about the camp, which referred to the Camberley Town Centre. It was about, the question came about asking about a meeting that was due to happen with councillors in February, and asking if had that been scheduled. And I just wanted to outline what that was. So the idea of that was that it was a meeting with the Town Centre Working Group, which is already scheduled for the 17th of February. So it wouldn't be adding any additional meeting. I don't know who asked the question, so apologies, but just to give the answer to that question. And really it's to ask the committee if there are any comments or any questions that they may have with regards to this item.
I see Miss Councillor Tapper has got his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I of the draft plan, I'm particularly interested in an item which is on page 278. That's page 6 of the draft plan, which is the work with Surrey Environmental Partnership. And I'm particularly interested in the comment there, proposed targets for 2021-22 to include litter bin review. JWS are currently working with Surrey Heath GIS team to create a waste layer in the GIS system. That's fine. What we need is more litter bins, to be quite honest. I have one particular incident in mind where in my ward there was a public footway that was particularly subject to litter dropping. I did bring the matter before Surrey Heath to ask for a litter bin to be situated there, but got nowhere. So I turned it on its head and went to JWS themselves and explained the situation and said, look, you're having to send people out to clear up this litter, left, right and centre. If there was a litter bin positioned here, it would solve a lot of your problems. We residents are responsible citizens. We pick up litter and stick it in the litter bin if there is a litter bin there to stick it in. And clearly what happened as a result was that JWS went back to Surrey Heath and said, please put a litter bin there. And they did. And it's now one of the most heavily used litter bins in the whole of our ward. And it's fully fulfilled my ambitions for what a litter bin should be provided for, where it should be provided for, and how successful it is if it is provided. So I'm wondering whether this review that's being carried out, whether it could be combined with a survey of the various different communities, asking the residents where they think they would benefit from having an additional litter bin installed. Perhaps that could be considered. Thank you, Chair.
I will hand that to Mr. Passion.
Yeah, Chairman, just for clarification, the JWS is actually Surrey Heath, so it's just the team that deal with the waste are called JWS, but it's still Surrey Heath team. But yeah, very happy to take that forward and look at that. Yeah.
Would you be thinking of doing a survey with the councillors to see whether the current litter bins are kept in the right places or right locations so they get fully utilised?
It's an ideal resource for the councillors to feed that information back, and very happy to take that forward. While I'm speaking, Chairman, can I just add one other point? And I'm sure Councillor Wheeler is going to probably raise it, but on the health side, I've already noted and I've already probably started redrafting that. That'll definitely include the Surrey Heartlands work. So yeah.
Thank you. Oh, actually, while we are talking about putting things in the right place, I mean, recently we've had snow and there are yellow bins out there where we should have salt, sand. I mean, in Crawley Ridge, it's empty. I don't know who is in charge, but I'm just raising it at this point because I've got the chair, so it's my prerogative to raise it. So there you go. Don't have to answer it now.
Mr. Chairman, if you send me an email of that point, I'll get that rectified.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mansfield. That was me being cheeky here. Sorry. Can I now ask Councillor White to it's your turn.
Thank you. It's just a quickie. It's page 274, COVID-19 response and recovery work. Was the major incident actually declared in 2019, or was it 19th of March 2020?
Would have been 2020. I'll get that.
19th of March 2020, and it's a typographical error from the Assistant Chief Executive.
So I'm just being Audrey Roxburgh for the day.
I think that was excellent. So thanks.
Can I also add something? I mean, when you to the members here, when you read this report, be aware that most of the numbers there, because 20, 21, 22, etc., was very unusual year. So the numbers will not reflect the norm, so to speak. So be aware of that when you read it and make a future. We want further. If you want to add something else in, please speak to Mrs. Livingston and try and sort it in a sensible way. Thank you. Next is Councillor, Emma. Sorry, Miss Margaret.
Sorry, I'm just going to go back to the bins because I wanted to say something with the bins. The other problem that we have with the bins at the moment, and I actually said at the parish meeting last night, we've got people putting rubbish in food bins, and then also we're having rubbish, like household rubbish, put in bins as well.
JWS problem. Mr. Passion, you want to take it, or?
It is a problem that we're experiencing quite a lot, and something that we are reviewing. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what we can do about it, but it is a fact that more people are using their domestic waste and putting it into litter bins.
Okay. I mean, if you find something like that, yeah, I would strongly suggest you email JWS and actually get them to come and put up a notice or something to that effect, or speak to Mr. Passion immediately.
Yeah, when I've said about it before, they've just said that I've had to sort of like get pictures or to see if I could actually find out like who is actually doing it. So like the resident that is doing it, but obviously that takes a lot of time, but then it's actually proving that it is that resident.
Yeah, okay, understand, totally understand. Mr. Passion, you want to add something to it, or you make a note of it, would you?
I will certainly make a note of that, yes.
Thank you very much. Next would be Victoria, Councillor Wheeler. Well, Councillor White, your hand is up. I presume you're done. Yeah, Councillor Wheeler. You're muted.
I just check. Yeah, I was unmuting. I just checked that I've also lowered my hand. It's actually a question that comes through again from one of the members of my group. There is reference on SHBC 3 that update following COVID-19 impact members workshop in February. He's not aware of that date. I have to say I'm not aware of that. February is already quite heavy with meetings. So I just wanted to request, please, if the notification of that date could be made as soon as possible, then that would be great. Yes, Mr. Passion, you're absolutely right. SHB 6, if it could be formally minuted, that will be adjusted to follow all areas. And then my final one, I will actually declare a sort of a non-pecuniary interest in this, which is the refurbishment of the London Road Recreation Ground. And it's just a request that we do contact the local schools with that. There are a couple of local schools in the area, and there's also a residents association. So my non-pecuniary interest is in the fact that it's the playground where I learned to jump from a swing on, and one that I do still sometimes visit. But I'm also very well aware of the local schools and also the residents association in that area. If we could make sure that with the consultation they are on that consultation list. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Livingston, you'll make a note of those.
Yes, I will make a note. And just to come back about that date, I did make reference to Councillor Wheeler. It's actually a workshop that will be part of the Camberley Town Centre Working Group meeting, which is scheduled, I believe, for the 17th of February. So it will be part of that meeting. So just to make that clear for you. But I will make note of the other points raised.
Thank you very much. I see no other questions on the agenda item 7. Rapidly moving on to agenda item 8, which is page number 285 for those with hard copies. Again, corporate risk register, Mr. Passion or Mrs. Livingston, one or the other.
Yeah, I'll take that if that's okay, Chairman, as the council's CIRO. This is the corporate risk management group's corporate risk register. We review it on a quarterly basis and refer it into the council's corporate management team, and it is reviewed annually at this time of the year by the Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee. You'll see from the annex the corporate risks that are currently identified as the key risks. We have 8 of them, and all of them have been risk assessed primarily since the pandemic started back in March of last year. You'll see each of them has an initial risk rating, followed by the mitigating action that the council is or has taken in respect of each of those risks. And then there's a subsequent risk rating as a result of those mitigating actions that's taken place. You'll see, even as a result of the risk mitigation, that there are still 2 risks, numbers 5 and 6, major incident and treasury and property income, that still are revised with red ratings after the mitigating actions has been taken place. We are, as I say, we monitor these through the council's corporate management team. Each of them has a corporate management team lead officer who is identified by their initials with a key at the bottom. And it's just something that we obviously are very mindful of in terms of the council's key risks. There are many other risks that we monitor on a regular basis, but these are the key corporate risks that the council are very much focused on. So that's where we are. It's over to the committee for any questions.
If I hand it to the others, Mr. Payne, could I ask, I mean, last year, as you said, because of COVID-19, most of them are 12, 16, it's all red. And now most of them are going towards the yellow. When you do the methodology used, I presume, is consistent as to when you start and when you do. And is it done by the same person, or is CMT working together as a cross-party?
Yeah, it's done by the corporate risk group, and that is made up of the Section 151 officer, the head of legal monitoring officer, the Tim Passion in his role as acting chief executive, myself, a member of the audit team, and we have 1 or 2 other key senior officers as part of that team. And yes, we review it every quarter.
It's the standards are the same, so we are comparing like with like.
Yes, correct? But as I say, because of the last year's situation, many of the risks are influenced by the pandemic, unfortunately.
Of course, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And also, what actually, sorry, before I don't see any hands up, so can I ask you on section 2, loss of funding from services, the government funding of 71.5%, yeah, of lost income. I mean, is that the minimum they give, or is there a maximum the government gives?
Mr. Hone is on as the Section 151. I'm happy to try and answer that, but if it's okay with you, Chairman, can I pass that on to Martin? Mr. Hone?
Martin is not there, you could, yes.
So just say that again, could you?
You're here. Okay, excellent, Mr. Hone. You're here.
Could you just say that again?
If you're on section 2, yes, loss of funding from services, yeah, we are actually saying 71.5%.
Yes.
Yeah, reimbursement back to the council. Is it the minimum, or is there a maximum of 100%?
No, it's that through you, Chairman. That's what it is that there's an eligible income that you can claim for. So, for instance, car park. Losses on car park income, losses on theatre income, and so forth, and they are defined in the scheme. So what they do is they look at what we set in the budget in February, which was before we knew the pandemic was going to hit, and therefore what we would have reasonably expected to collect in the year, and then they adjust for what we've actually collected in the year. The difference between those two numbers, they take that, and what they effectively say is we will give you 75% of that, less a 5% administrative fee, which equates to 71.25%. So for every £1,000 we lost, they will give us £712.50.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I was just scribbling there. So yeah.
That's fine. Thank you very much for that answer.
Yes.
Any questions on this section at all? I see that everyone's happy. Wow, excellent. Moving on rapidly before hands pop up. Work program, agenda, last item, agenda item 9, work program. I see that there's a small work program on page number 295. We are going to be the third quarter finance report. I presume Finance Office Section 151 Officer Martin Noon will be producing one. And the favorite ISO 9001 is appearing for the first time. Excellent. This is what I look forward to. It could be fun. And more than that, actually, there is some very important stuff coming down. Draft 5-year strategy, very good. And placement strategy and support and safeguarding. A property investment task and finish group, which we are carrying forward from for the last 2 months or 3 months. Anyway, it's turning up eventually. And when I say eventually, not in a sarcastic way, I know the reason why it's not turned up, but I'm glad it's coming up. Great. And that's about it. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your kind attention and all the important questions asked. Good night to everybody. See you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Stay safe.
Thanks, everybody.